Kofi descended to the ash-veiled depths for the first time since his emergence, and the tunnels that had been his world for 14 months felt like a coat he had outgrown. The entrance was the same collapsed ventilation shaft he had used 100 times as a scavenger. A gap in the earth wide enough for one body, angled steeply downward through compressed laterite and the fossilized root systems of trees that had grown and died before the Zagale arrived. He lowered himself into it with his good leg first, the cane wedged across his back, his hands gripping the shaft's rough walls. The laterite was warm under his palms, the surface warmth of sun-heated earth, not the deep geological heat of the system's substrate. The smell hit him immediately: mineral dust, stale air, the faint organic sweetness of decay that permeated every level of the depths. The scavenger's smell. The smell of a home he no longer fit inside. The first tunnel, the one he had named the throat, because it narrowed to a squeeze point that only a thin, flexible body could navigate, felt smaller than he remembered. Not physically smaller. Perceptually. The reformed mind's expanded architecture processed the space differently than the scavenger's survival-focused awareness had. Where the scavenger had seen passages and hazards and resource caches, the conductor saw infrastructure. Root line conduits running through the walls like veins. Shadow-binding residue in the obsidian deposits. Encoding frequency traces in the crystallized formations that the scavenger had cataloged as mineral curiosities and the custodian recognized as system components. The depths were not a ruin. They were a machine, the system's deep architecture, exposed and eroded and abandoned, but still structurally present beneath the collapse and the dust. He had lived inside a machine for 14 months and had not known it. The scavenger had been sleeping in the engine room. He passed his old camp at the junction of the throat and the cistern gallery, a hollow in the collapsed masonry where he had cached supplies, slept on a pallet of salvaged cloth, and eaten the sparse, bitter meals of a man surviving on scavenged tubers and the occasional rat. The pallet was still there. Flattened. Stained. The cloth rotting in the depth's constant humidity. A piece of salvaged copper wire he had been saving for trade sat on the ledge where he had left it, green with oxidation, the remnants of a life measured in wire and tubers, and the stubborn refusal to die. He did not stop. He noted the camp the way a man notes a photograph of himself as a child, with recognition, distance, and the quiet vertigo of seeing evidence of a person he used to be. The descent took 3 hours. His knee protested every incline, every step, every moment of weight-bearing on the damaged joint. The cartilage was gone. The reformed mind's diagnostic clarity confirmed what the pain had been telling him since the convergence. The femoral condyles pressed directly against the tibial plateau, bone-grinding bone. The joint's architecture collapsed under the weight of conducting cosmic amplified frequencies through a body that had been marginal from birth. Type Roman IV mechanical pain, continuous, positional, exacerbated by load. He stopped 4 times to rest. Sat on collapsed masonry with his bad leg extended and his hands pressing the swollen joint through the fabric of his trousers, feeling the heat of the inflammation, the fluid accumulation, the body's futile attempt to cushion a joint that could not be cushioned. Each rest period was precisely timed, 5 minutes, enough for the acute pain to subside, without allowing the joint to stiffen into immobility. The obsidian door was where he had left it, polished, black, inscriptions that had been incomprehensible to the scavenger glowing with familiar blue-white radiance at his approach. The door recognized him, not as candidate, as custodian. The distinction was in the quality of the response. The candidate's glow had been interrogative, assessing, the light probing. The custodian's glow was acknowledging, welcoming, the light warming. The same radiance. Different grammar. He touched the door. The surface was warm, the deep warmth of the geological substrate, conducted through the obsidian, carrying the specific temperature of something alive in the foundation. Not the ambient warmth of subterranean earth. Active warmth. Generative. The door was not merely reflecting stored heat. It was conducting heat from below, from the deep substrate, from the place beneath the protocol's architecture, where the Zagale had built without fully mapping what they were building on. The door opened. No fall, no darkness, No first trial. The training sequence was complete. The chamber simply opened, the dome revealed in its full amber radiance, the warm floor, the 50-meter ceiling of inscribed obsidian, the central pillar with its panel of black glass. The dome was as he remembered, but the relationship had changed. He had entered the first time as a scavenger who touched a wall because curiosity was the only thing the depths had not starved out of him. He was entering now as the person the chamber had been built to produce. The dome smelled of warm stone and ozone, the mineral scent of the protocol's operational frequency, mixed with the deeper, sweeter smell of the geological substrate's heat rising through the floor. A smell like heated quartz and iron-rich clay, dry and ancient, carrying the specific quality of air that had been sealed underground long enough to develop its own character. The amber light came from the floor itself, the warm, steady radiance of crystallized root-line energy embedded in the obsidian, illuminating the dome from below and casting the inscriptions on the ceiling in sharp relief. He sat on the floor. The descent from standing to sitting was a controlled fall, his good leg taking the weight, his bad leg extending as the knee refused to bend past 45 degrees without punishment. The cane clattered on the obsidian beside him. The warm floor received him. The heat seeped through his clothing, through his skin, into the damaged joint with a penetrating gentleness that the surface world's heat could not match. For the first time since the convergence, the knee's constant grinding eased. Not gone, reduced. The dome's warmth was therapeutic in a way that ambient heat was not. It reached deeper, penetrated the inflammation, calmed the tissues that had been screaming since the night he conducted from the floor of Tohaje's chamber. The system's infrastructure caring for the body that maintained it. He placed his hand on the panel. The glass warmed with immediate, responsive heat. The protocol recognizes the candidate. Status, complete, the system is whole.
I know I came to connect you.
He briefed the dome. 4 custodians operational. Tohaje as auditor, the cage maker turned watchdog, his knowledge of the system's vulnerabilities repurposed as defensive intelligence. Zara had transferred the Earthbond seal to Azindo. Tuesday diagnostics established. The network was functional. The system was being maintained for the first time since the factions dismantled it 1,000 years ago.
The chamber stays open.
He said.
Not sealed, not unprotected, connected to the custodian network as a monitored facility. If the custodians fail, if the network breaks, if the fragments are compromised, if the maintenance lapses, the protocol needs to be operational, able to find the next candidate, the next marginal person who stumbles into the depths and touches a wall because they have nothing left to lose, and curiosity is the only thing that survives when everything else has been taken.
The previous candidate sealed this facility for 43 years. Her assessment was that the risk of accessibility exceeded the risk of dormancy.
Her assessment produced the condition she was trying to prevent. Sealing the protocol did not stop Tohaje from understanding the system's architecture. It stopped the system from producing a replacement when one was needed. The immune response was removed, while every vulnerability it was designed to address remained intact. Zara's caution created the gap that Tohaje exploited.
The protocol concurs with this analysis.
Then we integrate. The protocol reports through the unified knowledge custodian, through me, and through whoever comes after me.
There will be successors.
That is the point. That is why the protocol exists, not for one candidate, for all of them. Every marginal person the system identifies. Every rejected consciousness that the surface institutions have discarded, the protocol finds them. The protocol trains them. The protocol produces custodians from the material the world has thrown away.
The protocol has always anticipated successors. That is the protocol's primary design function. The protocol was not built for the exceptional. The protocol was built for the sufficient. A pause. The inscriptions shifted, cycling through configurations, the obsidian ceiling's carved characters rearranging themselves the way they had during his training, but slower now. Meditative. The teaching system processing a transition from dormancy to integration, from isolated archive to connected node. Candidate assessment updated. Preliminary status, marginal, training status, reforming, completion status, reformed, current status. The panel was warm beneath his palm. The amber light pulsed once, a single, steady beat that resonated through the dome's architecture and out through the root line conduits into the broader network. Sufficient. Kofi laughed. The sound echoed off the dome's curved walls, genuine, warm, reverberating through the chamber's crystallized acoustics with the specific clarity of a sound produced in a space designed to register and remember. Sufficient, not exceptional, not outstanding, not powerful. The protocol's highest compliment, the assessment that said, "You are exactly what is needed. No more, no less, adequate for the task, calibrated to the requirement." For a man who had been told he was inadequate by every institution he had ever encountered, the military that rejected him for his knee, the scavenging economy that used him for his disposability, the surface world that had never looked at him twice, the word sufficient carried more weight than excellent ever could. Excellent implied surplus. Sufficient implied precision. The exact amount. Nothing wasted. Nothing lacking.
Sufficient.
He repeated.
I can work with that.
He sat with the dome for a while longer. Not conducting, not training, not assessing, just sitting. The way a person sits in a room where something important happened to them, not to relive it but to acknowledge it. To let the space know that the person it changed remembers the changing and does not take it for granted. He thought about the scavenger. The person he had been before the protocol broke his mind and rebuilt it. The marginal man who sorted the world into broken and fixable, who navigated the depths by instinct and stubbornness, who survived on 14 months of resourcefulness and the specific, irreducible talent of finding value in things the center threw away. Copper wire from collapsed conduits, intact masonry from ruined chambers, breathable air pockets in flooded tunnels. The scavenger found what others missed because the scavenger had no choice. When you have nothing, everything discarded becomes potential. The scavenger was not gone. The reformed mind had not erased him. It had expanded him. The scavenger's instincts, the ability to improvise, to find passages where none were supposed to exist, to build functional things from salvaged parts, were still present. Elevated. The man who had scavenged the depths for copper wire was now scavenging the system for coherence problems and corruption signatures. The man who had fixed broken things with whatever was at hand was now fixing a broken world with salvaged fragments and a ruined knee. The scavenger learned to fix bigger things. That was all. The core was the same. The marginal man who looked at broken systems and saw not waste but possibility. Not ruin but material. He reached into the pack he had carried from the surface and pulled out food. Wakai, rice and beans cooked together with dried millet leaves that stained the rice a deep reddish brown, the distinctive color of northern cooking. Ch.10 ladled on top in a generous portion, the dark, pungent pepper sauce made from dried shrimp and chili and onions fried in palm oil until the mixture was almost black. The smell of it sharp and complex and immediate. A strip of fried plantain on the side. The caramelized surface cracking under his fingers, yielding to the soft sweetness of the fruit beneath. He ate in the dome. The first meal consumed in the protocol's chamber. The warm floor beneath him. The amber light above. The taste of the surface filling a space that had only ever held training and assessment and the clinical precision of a teaching system designed for the broken. The wakai tasted like the market, like Mom Abina's stall, like the morning he had bought it, walking through Ironhaven streets with a cane and a stipend and the ordinary, extraordinary freedom of a man who could afford to feed himself. The Ch.10 burned pleasantly on his tongue, the chili's heat layered over the dried shrimp's brine and the palm oil's richness. The plantain was comfort, sweetness after heat, the sequence of a proper northern meal, substance, fire, sweetness, the rhythm of eating that the depths had interrupted for 14 months and the surface had restored. The dome registered the moment. The inscriptions brightened fractionally, a shift so subtle that only the reformed mind's precise perception detected it. The protocol processing novel input, organic material consumption within the operational space. An event outside the training parameters. A first in the dome's 1,000-year operational history. He finished eating, wiped his hands on his trousers, stood, the controlled ascent, the cane's familiar click against obsidian, the knee grinding through the motion with its permanent grievance. The dome's warmth had helped. The joint moved more freely than it had during the descent, the deep heat having calmed the inflammation enough to grant him another hour of reduced pain. He turned to leave, then stopped. The dome's walls were flickering. Not the training inscriptions, those had settled into their integration configuration, stable and calm, the ceiling's carved characters resting in their post-transition arrangement. This was something else. Beneath the protocol's inscriptions, in the obsidian substrate itself, patterns were emerging. Faint, intermittent, visible only because the dome's amber light caught them at angles where obsidian's natural fracture planes revealed subsurface structures, structures that were not carved but formed. Grown. Embedded in the volcanic glass, the way fossils are embedded in stone. The patterns were not the protocols, they were older, simpler, pre-Zagale, the foundation beneath the teaching system. The substrate that the Zagale had built on without, Kofi was suddenly, completely certain, fully understanding what was already there. The patterns flickered, warmed, faded, flickered again. Each cycle lasted approximately 7 seconds, the same periodicity Zuera had reported in the tapestry's fluid script, the same timing WuDon had detected in the grandfather tree's blue fruit. The same rhythm, expressed through different media, originating from the same source. Something in the deep substrate was testing a connection. Reaching upward through the obsidian, the way root lines reached upward through laterite. Slowly, tentatively, with the vast patience of something that had been waiting longer than the Zagale's entire civilization, and was in no hurry now that the system above it was finally being tended. The reformed mind filed the observation, cross-referenced it with the custodian network's Tuesday diagnostics, Azendo's boundary readings, anomalous warmth at the deepest interfaces, WuDon's root line communion, a secondary frequency beneath the standard channels, Zuera's tapestry, a blue thread and then a fluid script, both warm from below. 4 anomalies, 1 phenomenon. Something beneath the system was stirring, not threatening, not corrupting. Stirring the way something stirs when it has been sleeping for a very long time and is beginning to wake because the conditions for waking have finally been met. Kofi filed the data. He would bring it to the network. He would investigate. He would do what custodians did: notice, document, assess, maintain. He climbed toward the surface. The knee ground on every step. The cane clicked against obsidian and then laterite and then packed earth, the acoustic signature of the depths giving way to the surface world's warmer, softer sounds. The machine he had lived inside diminished behind him, the engine room he had slept in, the infrastructure he had scavenged without knowing what he was scavenging. The dome hummed below, transitioning from dormancy to integration, the protocol settling into its new role as a connected component of a network it had always been designed to serve. The sunlight hit his face as he emerged. Warm, real, the surface world in all its ordinary magnificence, the savanna stretching toward the horizon, the Harmattan ending, the first clouds of the approaching rainy season building in the south like white promises. The air tasted of dust and distance, and the faint, sweet undertone of wildflowers that the season's change was coaxing from the laterite soil. Sufficient, the protocol's highest praise, the scavenger's adequate measure, the conductor's honest assessment of himself and his place in a system that was never meant for the powerful. He walked toward Ironhaven. His knee protested. His cane clicked against packed earth. The system hummed beneath his feet, and beneath the system, something older hummed in counterpoint, faint, patient, promising. Sufficient, he could work with that,